One of my favorite teachings from our tradition is the question, what is more important, study or the acts of good deeds? And we learn in the Talmud that the answer is study. Why? Because it leads to the acts of good deeds. See, throughout our history, throughout our tradition, our ancestors, the rabbis, wondered about the interplay between how we think and what we do. This came to light in this week's Torah portion, Ki Tisa, in one of our people's darkest episodes, the constructing of the golden calf. When Moses had not yet returned from Mount Sinai to bring down the commandments, the people got restless, assuming that the worst had happened, that perhaps he never made it back, or perhaps God never existed in the first place. And so they called upon Aaron to make for them a golden calf that they could worship as their God. When God heard of this, God instructed Moses to hurry down from Mount Sinai and to take out wrath on the people for their stubbornness, not for the act of idolatry, but for their stubbornness. See, in God's mind, the big problem with the people is not what they did, but what they were thinking. The idolatry in some way almost could have been forgiven if the people had done so with a sense of a goodness of heart. But from this episode, we read from countless rabbis who remind us that what we do isn't the only thing that matters. What's going through our head, what's going through our heart, in the moments that we do them, be they good or bad, are also equally important. Think back to times in your life when people maybe have done something for you that helped you, but you knew that their motivations weren't entirely pure. How did that make you feel? And think about the times you've been able to forgive someone who did the wrong thing because you knew that they had the right motivations. It's not always easy. It's not always clear. But what is clear from our tradition, what is clear from our ethical code, is that we can't separate thoughts and feelings from actions. They are and always will be intertwined with one another. This week we have been focusing on the teachings of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, a man who, more than most, really appreciated that interplay between thought, emotion, and action. He wrote and taught a lot about the ideas of keva and kavanah in our prayer, that saying the words, the proper words of a prayer is important, and so is having the right intention or intentionality, being in that right headspace. That if you say the words without the emotion, well, you're just kind of performing. You're not really doing the act. And if you just have the feeling, that's good, but our tradition is a tradition of words that says you must say these words in this moment. Never more was that true when he invited us to think about Shabbat. Shabbat is a time when we are invited to do certain things, when we are instructed not to do certain things. We're told to do things like light candles, spend time with our family, our communities, enjoy the miracle and appreciate the story of creation. Traditionally, we were told to refrain from certain behaviors. We're not supposed to do things like light fire or gather sticks or travel certain distances. A study of Shabbat is a study of instructions to do and instructions of what not to do. And for many, many people, that has become their overarching approach to Shabbat. They're very, very careful not to do the things you aren't supposed to do. And they go to great lengths to make sure we do the things that we are supposed to do. What I love about our community, what I love about our movement is that, yes, we are cognizant of the fact that our tradition says to do and not do certain things on Shabbat. But the core of what I believe is a deep reform Shabbat practice is spending more time thinking about how do we feel on this day? What's going through our mind in the way that I think Heschel would often suggest that we think deeply about. For us, Shabbat is that Shabbat feeling that we sing about in the preschool on Fridays with them. But really, it's about how do we make this day feel different than the other days of the week, even if we have to go to work because our livelihood requires it. Even if we need to get in a car or use electricity, as so many of us, not only are we're doing right now because this is how we're accessing Shabbat during this pandemic. In our movement, in our community, and I'll say for myself and my family in our own lives, blending the idea of action and thought and emotion is a deeply Shabbistic experience that we do every single week. And so on this Shabbat, I invite you to think about what is the special feeling you pursue each week on Shabbat. And if you ever decide to challenge yourself in your Shabbat practice, my challenge for you would not be to say, I'm going to do this coming Shabbat, or I'm going to not do that this coming Shabbat. My challenge for you, my challenge for all of us, will be to imagine, how can we feel Shabbat more deeply? How can we feel Shabbat more widely? How can we feel Shabbat more authentically, in keeping with the teachings of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel on this Shabbat and on the Shabbatot to come? And I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.